Well, hello everyone. I'm going to welcome myself back to the Online Bible Institute Network podcast. I was away last week, and Pastor Brain was gracious enough to jump in last week and talk to my dad. So, somebody had to do it. But I'm Doug here. Pastor Brain's with me, and my dad, Pastor Steve, also here. So it's cool. We got the whole group together getting to do this, and looking forward to many more of these podcasts. We typically talk about our messages at Keys Vineyard, and I'm actually at my office today here at the church, so very excited to get to do it here. So we've been in a series called Kingdom Incarnate. We're in part 6, and last week, Dad, we had a good message from you, and why don't you kind of go over what we did last week, which was, do you want to get well, and do it not in a, process that takes 3 years like you did the last time you went over that verse, but as we kind of transition into this week where we talk about feeding the 5,000.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what we're doing in this part of this series, and John, is I thought we would look at the 7 signs or miracles, because the Gospel of John is really written around those things. And that the theme is that he says, if we tried to write all the stuff that Jesus did, it wouldn't fit. You couldn't write big enough. But these are written. He's talking about these 7 are written so that you can believe in Jesus, in what he's done, put your faith in him, and then in putting your faith in him, you have eternal life. So we've been trying to look at some of these 7 together. We'll look at all 7 together, and then we'll pop over into Luke to take us to Easter. But the last week at church, we talked about the healing at the pool of Bethesda, which is fascinating. And, I can barely touch on these. There's so much going on, and so many places you could take the story. But my favorite thing from that story is, do you want to get well? The question. And we sort of touched on it, why it's such a powerful and deep question, because the quick answer, yes, of course I want to get well, but do I want to change? Will I listen to God? Will I go God's way instead of my way? These are all the sort of factors that often I think what we want is we want to get well, but we still want to be able to do whatever we want to do. and
Yeah.
that's kind of the issue that goes into it. And so that's what we looked at, and couldn't even begin to talk about, how upset the religious leaders were because it happened on a Sabbath, and that's a whole nother story that's worth examining. We lost Brain. We'll keep.
We've been trying to
Oh,
keep Brain in the podcast, and what happens is Brain ends up with the joke we had was a brain freeze.
yeah,
So
which is really funny.
it
But
is. We had a good laugh about
he
that. Yeah.
just had another brain freeze.
He
He'll
just
probably come back. So, but
Yeah, he'll
we'll keep
hop in and
talking.
out. We'll keep just we roll with the punches. We don't stop for nothing, baby. We
No,
keep.
no, well, it's Cameroon too. So what
Yeah.
are you going to do?
Yeah. Right.
And he's been busy. We're opening up these new sites.
You open up another one in Lusaka, is that right?
He's in Zambia. Yeah. Well, we put it
Zambia.
on there, and we're working with
Okay.
the team now. So I just put the foundation up early this morning. So I got to go back and work at it. Brain is actually asking if he should join again. So I'm telling him okay.
Yeah, we'll keep
Um,
trying it.
yeah, keep trying.
Yeah.
So this week we're gonna pop into, and it's funny because this miracle, this sign, is actually sort of between. It's between the story of the last one that we looked at. Do you want to get well? So it's right in the middle of John chapter 6. So we were in the beginning of John 6 last week, and then also towards the end, and then what happens in the middle of John 6 is this story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. And well, actually, I'm getting ahead of next week. So next week there's 2. You'll see that it pops from there. So this is the beginning of John 6. I have to get my stories in line. That's what studying.
There's a lot of Bible, and you got a lot of sermons in there. So
I
yeah,
got a
take your
lot going
time.
on. All right. So this is about him feeding the 5,000. And then you'll see next week in the middle, when we're looking at this, there's a story in the middle about walking on water, which you're going to talk about the following week. And then it finishes with what we're going to talk about. All right. So he feeds the 5,000, and and actually that story occurs in all 4 gospels. But John gives us a little deeper meaning to it in that he connects it to Jesus being the bread of life. So, in the story, as you sort of look at the theme about going God's way or going our way, which is what we've been talking about with the whole "Do you want to get well" thing, the feeding of the 5,000 kind of ties into that because they're up on a mountainside. There's all these people, and Jesus says, let's give them something to eat. And the guys are like, well, there's no way. We couldn't, we don't have enough money. We don't have enough food. There's nothing we could do. And then one of them says, well, we do have these,
Couple of
these
fish sandwiches, you basically.
5 loaves and 2 fish, but what are you going to do with that? And they give it to him. And when they give it to him, this miracle takes place where there's enough for everybody. And you sort of, there's backstory in the other gospels that what it looks like is that the disciples have sort of figured out that they can feed themselves with the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, but there's no way they can feed everybody else because they're kind of telling Jesus, make all these people leave because we're hungry, we want to eat lunch, and we can't eat in front of them. And when they surrender their lunch, it's a pretty big deal. And actually, they surrender this kid's lunch. So, but the idea there is if you listen to God and go God's way, God can do things we can't even imagine. And a lot of times we don't go God's way because we can't stop thinking about us and how it affects us, right? It's the his way or our way sort of thing. And I love it. The end of that story is that there's so much left over that there's more than enough. They collect 12 baskets full of everything. There's so much that there's baskets full now. And the number 12 is significant because it's like there's a basket for every disciple, if you would, full of
Right.
bread, right?
Right.
So
But that sort of ties into the miracle, the wedding in Cana, when there was just more than enough wine as well. So
yeah,
when we give God when we give Jesus what we have, He just supplies our needs.
yeah.
He's everything we need. Really, is what it comes
Yeah.
down
Well,
to.
then
So
the new
that's just
covenant idea is that,
no.
he's a God of abundance. But even
Yeah.
then, we don't want to take that in selfishly because that message gets ruined too by
Sure, sure. Avoiding it from a prosperity thing. It's when you
yeah,
have Jesus, you have everything you need, and
yeah, yeah,
that's He will
yeah,
take care of you, and beyond what you can, you know,
yeah.
hope
So that's and that's that in itself would be a great sermon. But
right,
um, I've done that. We've talked about that in the past.
but
So I'm
right.
I'm just going to touch on that, and then I want to get into. But what John does is he takes it into the bread of life thing. And in the discussion, they actually link it there to manna. And so we last year spent a lot of time hanging out in Exodus and talking about manna. And I want to tie those ideas in with this message about how the whole bread of life thing is a trust issue, and it's the one that God uses in the beginning to teach Israel how to trust Him because in the beginning, the Exodus, they don't really know God. He's shown up and he's done these 10, amazing things and cut them loose, but they don't trust him. They don't know him. And it's significant that he takes them out into a desert to provide for them because there's no other options. And so they have to trust him. And the manna situation is how that's happened. It's bread. And what he says to them is collect enough for the day. And that's it. Well, they don't do that. They run out and get way more than that.
They want to stock up, get backups. It's just
Which is so our way, right?
Human. I know we like backups.
If a day's worth is good, 2 or 3 days worth is better.
Right.
Because what if he doesn't show up? And so they collect too much and it gets rotten. And I think it gets really rotten with maggots and everything overnight. And so they learn just to get enough for the day, except on the day, the one day in preparation for a Sabbath, they can collect 2 days worth, and it doesn't go bad. Well, that's really cool about trusting, because they have to trust that every day He's going to show up and provide them food, and He does. So it's where the idea of daily bread comes from, right? And so he does that with food. And then I want to tie into as well, because of something he says in John 6. We're going to tie into water. and how he provides for them water. And yet, very early on in this journey, they don't have water and they're grumbling and complaining, which is what we tend to do when we're not getting what we think we need. Uh, uh, is that they end up by this body of water, but it's bitter. They can't drink it. And they're like, "What this is even worse. We can see it. We can't drink it." And in the story, what happens in Exodus is that God um, points to a tree in front of Moses. He points him to a tree, and the word "point" there is the word Torah, which I love, which is the same word we use for the first 5 books of the Bible because they're pointing to Jesus. That like the signs in John are pointing to Jesus. Everything is pointing to Jesus. He points to a tree, and when Moses takes the tree and throws it in the water, the bitter becomes sweet. And this is a picture of a tree that is going to happen later on with Jesus on it, who takes the bitter and takes all the bitterness and makes it sweet, right? It's just fascinating how all those things tie together. And then sort of the admonition is that the whole manna thing was a daily thing, and daily bread. We need to receive Jesus. It's a daily thing. It's not like it's one and done. It's you press in every day. They had to go gather it freshly every day. So do we. We need to make it part of what we do is that we press into Jesus every day, and we do that with prayer and Bible reading and those things that I'm always talking about. But that's the big connection there. So to me, it's another fascinating story. And it sets us up well. Like I said, I was getting ahead of myself in the beginning because I'm thinking about next week as well, the following week when he walks on water and how that all ties in with what's happening. Because at the end of this story, and we'll talk more about this in the next podcast, the people are so impressed that he can make bread like this. They try and make him king by force, and he won't have it. And there's a reason. But let's save that one for the next one.
Yeah, I mean, lots of interesting stuff. I had heard that you might have even told me about it. How the symbolism of Jesus taking the cross, taking what was bitter and making it sweet, with Moses putting the stick in the water and it turns sweet. It's just it's always cool to see the tie-ins from the Bible. So the series has done just an awesome job of that. And it's been great getting to hear it. So, I mean, is there any other little tidbits we should be on the lookout for the sermon this week as we kind of gear up for this and then heading?
I'll save them for when we get there.
Oh, he's keeping them. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's try it.
I gave him quite a bit. I got a pretty good cliff note download of what's happening.
And then poor Brain, he couldn't get back on. I see. We were going to have a nice convo with him, all three of us. So we had all three of us on a podcast for about 30 seconds. That was really cool. Hopefully next week we've got that figured out a bit more. But,
we're last week it worked great with him. No issues. It just depends on it's around the world, and
maybe we'll blame it on me. I'm the different factor there.
So no, I don't think so. I think there's internet connect. We're very spoiled where we sit in that. Yeah, we have pretty amazing internet access and backups.
And I complain about it when it gives me issues. So
yeah,
which it does.
Yeah,
cool. Well, it was great hearing from it. I'm looking forward to this weekend, Dad. Y'all on the Bible Institute, thank y'all so much for listening and participating in these podcasts. We enjoy doing them. They're great. Hopefully they benefit you. Keep doing your courses. It's all good stuff. I'm hoping to come out with some sort of orientation thing to kind of get, new people integrated in well and get everybody just charged up for it. Or, you might just ignore it and that's cool too, but I'm going to make it regardless. Because we all love a good orientation class, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So on that note, keep doing your courses, read your Bibles. God bless you all. We will see you next week.